NineTen, NineTen, NineTen in the morning.
Yay. Hey, viewers of the NineTen podcast, whether you're a NineTen student, a NineTen leader, or maybe somebody who just stumbled upon this podcast and is checking it out. For the month of June, we're tackling some topics that fall under the category of mental health. So some anxiety stuff, some depression, suicidal ideation, and kind of tackling our cultural moment right now where so many of us are wrestling with this and struggling with it. And so interviewing a couple counselors, a couple people that have walked through this personally. I shared a little bit of my story in this month's podcast. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up before you dive into this, before you watch it or listen to it on Spotify, that these are some of the things that we're talking about. And so if this is a triggering topic for you, or this is while you're listening, you're wrestling with something, please don't wrestle alone. We would love to talk to you. Reach out to us here in NineTen or at North Coast Church. We'd love to put you in touch with the right people. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Check out this episode. All right, what's up, NineTen, episode 2.
Woohoo!
With my gal, Karen Keith here. This is part 2 to a conversation we started a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then you got sick.
I did get sick. What a drag,
What a
man.
drag.
I'll tell you what.
But it wasn't COVID.
It's not COVID. Yeah.
Isn't that weird how like normal sickness used to exist before COVID, but now it's like you get sick and your mind immediately jumps.
Oh, you freak.
There's no such thing as just a regular sickness anymore.
No, everybody freaks. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
But
wild.
I'm good now, so we're good.
You're back.
We're back.
You're back. Okay, I'm going to bump this just a little bit closer to you there.
Okay, there we go.
Karen, I want to dive right in because this conversation is so important to me and to our community, and I know it's an important conversation to you right now.
Yep.
Last time we really spent the bulk of our time talking about anxiety and a little bit of my journey with anxiety,
Yeah.
And hopefully some helpful tips and tricks to our listeners of going like, hey man, what do you do with this when you're wrestling with it? Because it's such a predominant thing
Absolutely.
in our society and our culture right now. And right now I want to jump into this conversation on depression.
Yep.
Suicidal ideation.
Yep.
There's just been such a crazy uptick in teens struggling with this.
Yeah, there is. Big time.
In particular. And it's even crazy, like pre-COVID,
Right.
we were seeing an uptick, like back-to-back years
Yep.
of a spike in this. And then I think COVID was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back a little
100%. I think COVID made it increased it like tenfold just because of the isolation of everyone, right? And before, yes, it's definitely on the rise with depression, but the only saving grace is we had community. We had in-person community is more than we did with COVID. COVID it just took it all away. So that's where people tend to go in their own mind when they're feeling sad or depressed, and that's where the danger starts, right? Is when we sit in it in our own minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, like just right off the bat, what would you say to anybody who's wrestling with those thoughts and it's become such a normalized thing, right? Like I would go back to our conversation last time. I talked about anxiety and mental health. When I was in high school, it was so taboo.
Yep.
And now there's been a swing to the other end where it's so normalized.
Yes.
And I love what you said last time of we want to normalize it, but not celebrate it.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Of course, we want the conversation out there because maybe the worst thing you could do is isolate.
Yep.
But we don't want to celebrate it.
No.
We don't want it to be just a normal.
Right. You don't want to glorify it. You're right. We don't want to
Right.
glorify it. We just want to sit with it and go, okay, wait a minute. There's something going on. I need to pay attention. Right. And it's a warning sign. Anxiety is a warning to us saying, hey, look, let's just pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
And let's bring someone in. Because I think if I remember correctly, I was stating the statement is anxiety is a bully, right? Bullies go away if you let somebody in and you call it out. And that's what we need to do with anxiety. That definitely helps with that. Yeah.
So when it comes to depression that leads to these even darker thoughts
Yep.
of not just the depression where, maybe there's a lack of desire to do the normal things that you have been doing. You're normally a passionate person, but
Yep.
that maybe a little bit more of this darker depression that's led to this suicidal ideation, that's
Yep.
led to these thoughts of self-harm.
Yep.
What's kind of that first action step?
Well, I kind of want to go, though, Austin, back to the beginning when
Okay.
you start feeling it, because this is the problem is the greatest thing is to know when we start feeling it is same as anxiety, notice it and let's call it out.
Good.
Is because if we just if we're feeling sad, a breakup. Let's just use a breakup because it seems to be the commonest, or you don't get a job or whatever. You're not getting what you want. And you'll sit with it and you're bummed, right? And you don't share too much. You might share with a friend, but then the thoughts start coming in, right? Because you're not really talking about it. You're keeping it internal. And then so some of the thoughts are, I'll never date again. Nobody will ever love me. Then you'll start thinking about the faults you have, right? And so it turns all inward and it turns all negative. So at that point, you're not thinking about suicide. You're just getting deeper and deeper into this darkness, right? And gosh, I would encourage people at that point to please reach out, and to friends of people who see their friends like that, to please call them out on it. Say, hey, what's going on? Because if we ignore it, this is when the unfortunate does happen. So what happens is it builds up, right? Is we don't talk about it, and all of a sudden the negative thoughts and the beliefs start coming in, whatever they might sound like. I'm not good enough. I'll never be loved, blah, 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 which is true to them at the time. So, but what happens is you start believing that, and then it starts going into why bother? Then you're going deeper. I'm not going to, nobody will miss me. I can't do this. And then the suicide comes in, the suicide ideation. So the biggest thing, I think everybody, if they could hear me, is tell someone. Let someone know. That's the biggest thing I'm going to tell people, even when you're starting to feel it, right? Because, people use the word depression. We talked about anxiety, how common it is, right? Yeah. Depression is just as common.
Right.
But the problem with depression...
And crazy misdiagnosed, right?
Bingo. That's what I was saying.
You can go like, oh man, I went to my favorite coffee shop this morning. They didn't have cold brew. I'm so depressed.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
I had to get an iced Americano instead.
First world problems, right?
Huge first world problems.
So, but exactly.
But it's used so casually.
So honestly, I actually want to read the description of depression. Yeah. So somebody, you can hear this and see the exact meaning of it, okay?
Good.
So depression is actually a mood disorder. So when we're feeling sad, and I'm going to use the word depressed as intensely sad, right? That's an emotion God gave us. God gave us to be sad, right? I mean, because again, this is a warning. Hey, something's not right? Or we didn't get our expectations met. That's normal. But when it comes into depression, it becomes a mood disorder. And at that part, this is when it really is depressing. When it is depression. It's when it's a persistent feeling of sadness and a loss of interest. I mean, when I say persistent, I mean you're waking up months and you're waking up sad. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have no interest. As a matter of fact, it gets to the point where you can't get out of bed, but you don't want to go to work. You stop meeting with friends. You isolate. Those are warning signs that you are going into a depressive state.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much does apathy play into that?
Quite a bit. And again, apathy is one of those things, right? I mean, you can become apathetic on something, right? And that could be actually just temporarily because of what you're going through right there. But if you see yourself apathetic to a lot of different things, then again, that's a warning sign, right? And people who are suffering from this, and friends, guys, listen to this, please. We might not know we're in this. Yeah. Because when you're in it, you don't know it. So it's really important for our community to come alongside of us and pay attention to each other, right? And say, hey, what's going on? I know that you're in a funk, or hey, you didn't come out last night. What's going on? Yeah. Don't let things slide, guys, if you know your friend is struggling.
Yeah. Maybe I know we're addressing the individuals that are walking through this, but let's flip-flop it a little bit and talk about the community surrounding the individual. First of all, what an important thing to have that kind of community.
Yes.
Right. I love that. That's why we stress so much of the importance of being surrounded by people that love you enough to speak truth and hard truth.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I love that North Coast has such a big life group community. And that's absolutely that's my heart with 9th and 10th graders, of just starting to communicate. This is the value of having people around you.
Yes, absolutely.
And introducing them to that. But say you're on the side of things where, you're starting to see one of your friends, that's maybe a little bit more apathetic, or you're seeing one of your friends downward spiral.
Yep.
or you're on the side of it where your friend goes, hey, this is how I'm feeling. What's the response as the friend?
Okay, so the friend is first is saying, gosh, of course, always validate, guys. Never say, oh, you'll get over that. Don't dismiss it or try to push it away,
Yeah.
okay? Because that does nothing for the person who's feeling that.
Right.
So I guess the biggest thing is just come alongside and say, I'm there for you. Tell me what's going on. Let me pray for you. Let me hug you. Whatever. Be there and be a listening ear.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we don't want to have is we don't want to play therapist, okay? I mean, we can listen, but sometimes if it becomes too heavy what the person is saying, the person going through it, because we don't know. It could be a family matter from way back when or whatever. So we're just going to encourage them to talk to a pastor or get help.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. But for that friend at the time, the biggest thing you can do is just listen. Listen, be there for them. Say you're there, you care for them, you're praying for them, and you'll be there for them. And if they are having a struggles, is to please let them know. Okay. Now, again, you're going to always encourage professional help if you realize, wow, this is getting way too deep for me. You also might want to connect. This is a touchy situation, guys, because if your friend is down and you've talked to them, and you're still concerned enough, guys, you might want to reach out to a parent. You might want to reach out to somebody close to that person and a relative to speak to them.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to do, but you might be saving that person's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Let me chase that a little bit of in these conversations, because I think it is so common.
Yep.
And sometimes I think, unfortunately, when you watch somebody take their own life and then get a lot of coverage or a lot of attention because of it.
Yep.
It's a little bit like the school shootings, right?
Absolutely.
Where you watch a school shooting get coverage,
Yep.
and then somebody goes, "Whoa, that person was a hero," or that person in a weird, twisted way, right? It's like, look at the attention that got in national media coverage, and I'm never going to get that kind of attention. Right? Does that make sense? Like that tracking of that?
It does. But I want to put out the other side. The other flip side of that is there were so many warning signs, especially if we're talking about the Texas shooting, right?
Yeah.
That guy, I mean, there were so many of his friends that called him the school shooter. That was his nickname.
Wow.
So you look at this and you go, what? So these are the signs that today's time, this is the sad thing. We've almost become numb to some of these signs.
Wow.
We've almost become we just glance over it. We don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And we can't.
Yeah.
I think it's our responsibility I'm going to bring Christ followers in it to walk alongside of each other and to really find that.
Yeah, but with the normalcy of it, like how do you as a friend or as a part of the community differentiate between this is just somebody talking, right? They're just talking about hurting themselves or suicide, and no, this is actually, because like my worst nightmare is not paying attention enough to a conversation and then somebody actually taking their lives and going, oh no. Right. Like those friends that go, oh, we called him the school shooter and we didn't do anything about it. Exactly. You probably have a pit in your stomach.
Oh, 100%.
For the rest of your life going, why did I not do something?
Right.
And I think when it's, I don't want to like minimize it by calling the boy that called wolf, right? Like that feels so like elementary of going, well, how do you know if it's everywhere? But yeah, I guess that's my question: is how do you differentiate between the serious talk and the? Does that make sense?
Yeah, at 100%, because you do have those people, and unfortunately, I'm going to say that do that for attention. That say I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to cut myself, I'm cutting or whatever they do, self-harm, and I really cringe when I say this, but some of them do for attention. But in my book, anytime anyone mentions it, even if it's cry wolf, we've got to look into it.
Yeah, that's good.
And if it's cry wolf, yeah, you know what? We're still going to look into it, but we're going to tell that person too. We're going to tell them in a loving way, hey, look, we love you, and this is a problem right here that you're calling crying wolf. Yeah. Right. And so we kind of deflect that, and still that person needs help, but we've got to address it every time. We can't ignore it these days just because a lot of the people who were having suicide ideation, you don't know. You can meet them, you could see them for lunch, and they're laughing and they're in a great mood, and you don't have a clue. And then the next thing you know, you hear that they killed themselves. So it's just, it's scary. It really is scary out here. And my biggest thing is connection and being aware of one another and being aware of ourselves, of course, and being able to reach out to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the way out, Karen? I feel like personally, I feel like the way that I walk through life, I'm either like downward spiraling or upward spiraling, right? Like in just in general, right? And I'm not talking about necessarily like a deep, long struggle with depression, but I just mean like even outlook on life and relationships around me. As a culture that feels we're in a moment of downward spiral.
Absolutely.
What's
no question.
the like stop reverse?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know when I'm in therapy quite a bit, and I'm talking to teens, or I'm talking to parents of teens, or even young adults, and they don't see hope. They don't see hope coming in the future because of this world the way it's going, right?
Yeah.
So it is pretty scary and pretty negative. But this is where I'm going to lean into Christ, or the community that we are in. Because really, if we're in a community that has an upbeat, positive attitude, or really good heart and wanting to help others and serve each other in a Christian culture or whatever culture that is, that you're really in tune with yourself and you love Jesus and you know you're going to help other people, that community is more or less going to be there for you. And yet we're going to struggle, but we have somebody to rely on. We just do. I am going to use this example that I just had, if you don't mind saying that. Okay. So unfortunately, Austin knows this. I have a client whose son committed suicide on Saturday, this past Saturday, and it was very hard for me to hear. I've been praying to God and just asking God. I don't understand, but just looking at this, here are the facts, guys. This kid, great kid. He was a good kid. I'm hearing that he could have broken up with his girlfriend probably a month ago, but his community, they're awesome kids. They don't have Christ in their life, and they go out and drink, and they party, right? And kids, we all party. I mean, kids party. I get that.
Yeah.
But the problem with that scenario is they party, and they party. Most of them party because they don't want to deal with what's going on with them.
Right.
And so that night, they went out and partied. They had a good time. Nobody knew something was wrong with this individual. They knew that he was depressed in the past because he broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so he left, and then he took his life on the way home. So totally unexpected. And of course, the friend group now, I hate to say this, guys, they're not dealing with it. They're not talking about it. They're going to their partying state. So right there, here's an example of a group of kids that are all struggling, right? But they're in this group and they party and they're close friends, but they're not dealing with life. They don't have Christ in their life. So I look at this and I go, wow, if one person would have noticed this kid and said, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
That could have changed something. Alcohol totally changes the gamut. Any drugs you put in your body. Guys, I'm going to say weed, I'm going to say coke, I'm going to say whatever you're doing out there, shrooms, anything, drinking, guys, you're under the influence. You are right now, are not sane mind. So who knows where this 21-year-old kid's brain was because he was drinking and doing drugs. So we just don't know. So
it's such a numbing coping mechanism too.
Such a numbing.
And I know you can relate to this because we talked about it a little bit last time. But for me, it was 2 years in college playing soccer and partying. And I look back now and I think for a year I'm a very passionate individual. But I remember there being a year where it's exactly what you're talking about. It's the lack of interest in things that I was normally interested in. And I turned to what was around me. And it was
which
the
was
community around
fun
me.
or looked like fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
In the moment, I always kind of jokingly say this, but it's real. It's like if sin isn't fun, you're probably doing it wrong, right? It's like
Amen on that, brother.
like you're having a good time.
Absolutely.
The problem is it doesn't last.
Nope.
And so it's like you gotta re-up, you gotta redose,
All
you
the
gotta
time.
re-dive in.
Yep.
And it's like the party on Friday night's great, and then you wake up Saturday morning going, man, I feel alone.
Yep.
That I feel empty. My
Yep.
head is pounding.
Absolutely.
And you just go like, I gotta change something. But then you re-up,
Yep.
and then you re-up, and you re-up, and it's not that like sometimes the substances are addictive, but to me, it wasn't that I was addicted to a substance. It was that I was terrified of dealing with what was actually
Bingo,
going on.
that's exactly
And so I
it.
just kept chasing it,
Yep. And kept numbing it. Now,
Yeah.
let me just share. I don't think I've shared this with you, so I'm sharing something with you. So, I didn't become a Christian until my 40s, so I lived the world. And in high school, I was a complete stoner. I mean, I was a wake and bake, right? I did it for a few years.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I go, wow. That was a total suppression of any feeling because I was struggling so much in high school and struggling so much with my life that I could not deal with it. Well, I did not deal with it because I was stoned the whole time.
Yeah.
And I look back at that now, and this is a hard pill for me to swallow because as soon as we start using drugs and drinking, right? As soon as we start using substances, especially in high school years, we are still growing emotional maturity. So when I started doing drugs, and unfortunately I started drinking and drugs at an early age, my emotional maturity stopped.
Yeah.
And now it's a hard pill for me to swallow at being at my age and seeing, wow, I'm caught up now. But when I stopped doing drugs and became healthy and found Christ, it took me about 10 years
Wow.
to catch up to my peers in my emotional maturity.
Wow.
Because I had stunted it because of drugs.
Yeah.
And so that it stunts you and,
Yeah.
and you stop learning and you
Right.
just learn how to cope by using that.
Well, what I think is fascinating about emotions is this is a weird analogy, but like I think about a breaker box.
Yep.
Like you open up an electrical panel.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking, I'm just going to turn off the negative emotions.
Yes.
I'm just going to go sadness,
Anger. Yep.
loneliness. I'm just
Yep.
going to flip those off.
Yep.
But I want to stay happy and joyful and content and kind and gentle, and I'm gonna pick and choose. But I think emotions are much more than the like master breaker.
Oh,
It's like I'm either gonna flip this whole thing off, or
Yep.
I'm gonna flip the whole thing on. And a lot of the times, what we're doing when we're smoking weed or drinking or numbing, it doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. It could be video games.
Oh,
it can be YouTube. It
absolutely.
can be a girlfriend. It can be a boyfriend.
Yes, it can.
Your drug of choice. When we flip that master breaker, we lose our ability to experience life in the way that God designed us to experience
Bingo.
life.
100%.
And that's what stunts that growth,
Yep.
right? Which
Yes.
I absolutely experienced the same thing. It's when you start flipping that off, flipping it off, you start to realize I'm not happy.
Right.
I'm just experiencing momentary. Like I
Joy.
remember the first party I went back to where I had stopped drinking and stopped doing this. I was starting to dive back into community and church and opening up my Bible. And I remember I went back to the party because I had all the same friends, right? I had just started to make different choices. But I went back to the party and I wasn't high. I wasn't drunk. I just went to hang out with my friends.
Yep.
And it was like I saw it for the very first time. I just went, this is so sad.
Exactly.
It was weird.
Yeah,
It was like
absolutely.
scales had fallen off my eyes, and I saw what everybody was chasing and what I had chased for years. And it was weird.
It is weird, and I love what you said though, because realistically, at the time, I had a blast.
Right.
I mean, I just had fun. I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
But you're right. Then you look at it and you go, "Oh my!" It actually is very sad to
Yeah.
look at it right now, and to go back and to see your friends and to see them rely on this stuff, and some people, some of them don't have a clue.
Yeah.
What it's doing to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this is a scary situation, especially now, especially in today's time. Everything is so easy.
Right.
I mean, everything's legal.
Yeah.
Everything's.
What made you stop smoking weed?
It was very interesting. All of a sudden, I started having kids, and I said, absolutely not.
Right.
But I just was not having fun anymore. And something was missing. It wasn't making me happy anymore.
Yeah.
I was getting stoned. I was getting whatever. I was starting to get paranoid. I was trying to do good, but I was trying to live a double life. That's what I was trying to do. And it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then finally I just realized through God, he brought someone in my life, and then everything changed. But yeah.
You know what mine was? I was, what was I doing? I think I was at Disneyland. And I thought to myself, man, this would be so much more fun if I was high. And that thought terrified me.
Oh, it scares me now thinking.
Because that was it for me. It was just, I'm done.
Yep.
I went from, it was always just recreational for me. I was never like dependent on it. I was never all the time. It was just when my friends were getting high, I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yep.
But that thought terrified me because I was like, man, if I can't have fun, just pure fun, and I need to one-up it, I need to experience something else. Yep. That thought just scared me in the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
I just went, nope.
And here's another story I'll share, which is really funny. So I stopped everything. And then at year 20 in my marriage, I was just going through a rough time because I didn't deal with a lot of my stuff that I was trying to numb back in the day. I didn't deal with it. I just went on with life. Well, it came back and bit me. And so then I was at the road. I wasn't a Christian yet, but this is what made me a Christian. I was at that road now. Hey, I think I'm going to go back to drugs. Because you know what? My kids are gone out of school.
Yeah,
hey,
dang.
You know what? I think I'm just going to start getting high again. I started dabbling in it, and oh my God, it was a complete different thing. At first I liked it, and then I came home one time. This is so horrible. My kid was home from college, and he had all his friends over. I come home. I'm high with my sunglasses on. My son, I go in. My son is high with his sunglasses on.
Whoa.
That was it. I just said, I freaked. As a parent, can you imagine that as a mom?
Right.
I mean, they never knew, of course, because I was just starting it, but then I saw that.
Right.
That was it. I went, okay, this is no. And my son, I was very, very honest with my sons. And so now we're all on the same page, realizing, oh my God. But it's so easy to go back to it.
Right.
I mean,
which is crazy to think because I work with 9th and 10th graders, and I think a lot of my high school students justify I'm in high school. I'm young. It's fine.
Absolutely.
I'm just having a good time.
I'm just getting high one night. What's the big deal?
But to know that the ramifications of how consistent and normalized it was when you were in high school, years later, it was a quick coping mechanism.
Bingo, just like that.
Yeah.
And that's what made me realize, whoa, this is scary.
Wow.
Yeah, for me. Now, again, for me, because I didn't deal with any of my issues, right? So, guys, if you're finding yourself going to drugs and you want to get high and drink, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, now you're finding yourself needing it, let's please stop and take a look at that.
Yeah. Dang, Karen, I could literally always talk to you for 2.5 hours.
I know, I love this.
We're quickly running out of time here. Just as we land the plane here, talk to me, or really talk to a viewer, a listener. Yep. Maybe I'm not smoking weed. I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just struggling. I'm just wrestling. I'm just sad. And I feel myself downward spiraling. Land the plane here a little bit for me.
Absolutely.
What do I do?
Okay. First of all, guys, you know what? I'm just going to normalize something. If you're sad, you didn't get the date you wanted. And let's say it's something minimal right now. Okay, guys, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to tell you that, and you know that. So just talk to somebody. Just talk to a friend if you can. You know what, guys? I'm talking to you because we're at the church, so I am assuming that you believe in God. So, guys, go to God. Say a scripture or two. I've got so many scriptures here that we can read when we're depressed. So go to the Bible, go to a friend. If that doesn't, go to your parent, go to your pastor, go to someone. Okay, and if all of a sudden you're thinking something's happening and now you're sitting in it for a while, again. People in that community, pay attention to each other. Call that person out. Reach out to them. Yeah. The person's struggling. It's okay to reach out. You're not going to believe when you reach out, you're opening the door for somebody else to reach out. So this is the huge thing, is we feel like we're all alone going through this, and that's the number one feeling everyone feels, myself included, to this day in times. I feel like nobody gets to understand this. That's such a false negative belief, because somebody can understand you and get you. So, guys, you're not alone. We are going through it. So reach out and tell somebody, reach out and talk to somebody, and know that you reaching out could open the door for somebody else to reach out.
Yeah. So good. So good. Karen, we made it through like a 30-minute podcast without you swearing. You did it. Hey, high five.
Oh, man, I just want to swear, son of a... I'm not going to.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.